Detroit guitarist Billy Davis has achieved a lot in his 63-year music career. He played with Hank Ballard and the Midnighters over a span of 30 years. He's been inducted into Cleveland's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Boston's Doo-Wop Hall of Fame, and Detroit's Rhythm and Blues Hall of Fame. Now he will get the opportunity to represent Detroit at the International Blues Challenge in Memphis next month.
I see you riding inside, pretty baby. Now that you set me free, now you fell down, if ever at all, ever think of me. You got a new lover, a brand new lover, and such a lucky guy is he. With you by his side in that red Cherokee.
I'd like to welcome Billy Davis to American Black Journal, along with Laura Grimshaw, who is the co-author of his upcoming biography. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you both for having us here.
Yeah. So welcome back to American Black Journal, I should say, because you were just here recently talking about your music. We're always glad to see you and talk with you. Talk about this competition in Memphis. What does that mean to you?
Well, I'm kind of excited about it because the blues was my first love. I've been into rock and roll and everything else, but the blues was my first love, but I never really got into it that much.
Yeah.
So this is my opportunity to get into it and go back to where I grew up at and my career started in Memphis.
In Memphis, right, yeah. Right. And you started out learning music through the blues, right?
Right, sure did. That was my first introduction to music, to the blues.
Right, and I always think that there's a strong connection between blues and good rock and roll, right? The best rock really has its roots in those progressions, in those chords that are so familiar from blues music.
Yeah, well, Muddy Waters described it exactly the way it should be. He said, the blues had a baby and they named it rock and roll.
Right. And at this competition, it's an international competition, which I think speaks to the recognition. I mean, blues being one of the original American art forms, it speaks to how much it resonates with the people around the world.
Right, sure does.
Yeah. So his biography.
Oh, his biography. Well, he's been writing his biography for 5 years.
Yeah.
Books.
Uh-huh.
And I hired him to represent my husband at an art show musically. My husband was Gary Grimshaw, a famous poster artist.
Yeah.
And since then, on the drive home, he started telling me about his life. And of course, I said, well, you should write a book. And he said, well, I have been for 5 years.
I have been writing a book, right?
So I started out as a typist, basically, and it grew from there to a little bit of editing, and then a little bit of adding, and then a lot of questions. We're still writing the book.
Yeah.
It's still unfolding as we speak.
Huh.
And this new phase is wonderful. Since I've been working with him on the book, he's gotten 3 really large awards of recognition, besides being in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the Doo-Wop and the R&B Hall of Fame. He's gotten some State of Michigan recognition, County of Wayne, and from Luella Hannon Foundation, the 70 over 70 award as well.
Yeah. When I say 63-year music career, I mean that's I think a little overwhelming for some people to think that you've been at it that long. Talk about that sort of time, that amount of time, and how your relationship to the music has changed over that time. I would imagine you feel differently even about it now.
Oh yeah, because I started out I was ahead of my time, because I was doing music that didn't even have a name at the time.
Right.
And I played with a lot of people like, Jackie Wilson, Isley Brothers, and people like that, It's just now today is totally different, the music business, like you said. But getting back to the blues, that has never changed.
Yeah.
So that's what I have never experimented in and did any major recordings in it, like I want to do now.
Like you're able to do now. I mean, we see in the clip there, you on stage with one of your bands, right? Are you writing a lot of the music yourself?
I write it all.
You write it all?
Because I have lived it, so
Yeah.
I like for it to be real.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, in a way, that's unusual to go back to sort of what you came from after a long time doing
Right,
something else.
my first influence, it was the blues, but when my first big break came in rock and roll.
With rock, right? Yeah. Well, my most vivid image, I guess, of you is with Jackie Wilson. Talk about that relationship. That was an important musical relationship, right?
Oh, that was very, very, very great, because when I was started, Jackie and I knew each other since we were very young.
Right.
And he knew when I started playing guitar, he said, "You learn guitar, so one day you can play for me, Because even though he was a young guy, he knew what he wanted to do even then, and he loved singing, and he knew that's what he wanted to spend the rest of his life doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
He said, "Well, you learn the guitar," and we ended up doing that.
Right. And you did that together for a long time. I think very much of his sound being about your sound in many ways. Do you feel that way?
Oh yeah, because when one of his biggest hits was "Higher and Higher,"
right?
And the record company didn't like it. They listened at the little disc about that, took it through in the trash can. He went and got it out. We came to Detroit, and I called up some of the Funk Brothers, and we went and recorded at United Sound. But he could do any type of music, pop, jazz, you name it, blues, rock and roll.
Yeah.
So it was very, and he was like a brother to me,
Yeah. How much of this story, you hear him reference United Sound, very important studio here in the city of Detroit. How much of his story is a Detroit story about the progression of music, the progression of culture over his lifetime?
Well, over the lifetime, I believe it's mostly a Detroit story, even though he did travel internationally with Hank for a long time.
Yeah.
He did work in New York for a while. He worked in Memphis for a while. But when he came home to Detroit.
Yeah.
And he started other businesses. He had a boutique for a moment, and he went into helping youth, troubled youth. Many of those young men come up to him even today and say, "Hey, Mr. Davis, you remember me?" And they're that big, and
Right.
he doesn't remember, but he remembers.
Yeah.
And so this has been his home, and so the story, Billy could have been a funk brother. However, it's kind of probably better for Billy that he
wasn't.
end up
Yeah.
a funk brother. Yes.
Yeah.
Would have been. He can't be pigeonholed into one thing.
Right.
And so making him a funk brother would have kept him in one box, and I'm not sure that would
have done him
Billy
justice.
Davis.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk more about what you sort of hope to do in the next few years with this sort of rediscovery of blues.
What I'm hoping to do is do the best recording I ever did, and I want to write the greatest song ever, because I feel I haven't wrote the best that I can.
Yeah.
That's my goal, is to write the greatest song that I ever written.
Yeah.
And to record it.
Huh. Yeah, and put it out on a record.
Exactly.
Well, we will be waiting for that, of course. I'm sure you will accomplish that. Talk about the musicians you're playing with, too. The blues. It's a different group of folks than rock and roll, right?
Oh yeah, totally different. A lot of the guys, because blues is a feeling,
Right.
It's not how much you know and it's you got to feel it. If you can't feel it, you can't really.
You can't do it. Yeah.
But I feel it because I've had the blues for I've had it. I've lived it daily.
Right. But what about choosing the people who you're playing with. They have to feel it too, right?
Oh, you're right. That's why it's hard, because you have to pick the right guys that, to get it done.
Yeah.
Because everybody can't feel it. A lot of guys can play great,
right?
but they
But
really
they don't
feel it.
feel
right.
it. Yeah.
Have him
Yeah,
tell you
go ahead.
about Maruga this Saturday. He played with Maruga Booker, who
Yeah.
played with Hooker. Tell him about that. Bill.
Yeah, well, Maruga Booker, he played with John Lee Hooker for years. He did we just did a project called Booker Plays Hooker.
There you go, right?
And we playing the music that John Lee Hooker made.
Yeah.
And we just
That's amazing.
take very special musicians to play that.
Yes,
stuff.
it does. To play it right.
Right,
Yeah.
because a lot of guys are great musicians, but they can't really feel that kind of
Can't
music.
feel it. All right. Well, congratulations on the competition in Memphis, and we will look forward to all this new discovery.
Thank you so much. I'm going to do my best.
Yeah. No, I'm sure it will be fabulous. All right.